everyone. Welcome to Concerning the Community and our continued conversation on the heroin issue that is going on in Wolfeboro and all the initiatives that are taking place. We've been having a continued conversation. We've had Captain Dean Rondeau in a few times. And we introduced Melissa Fernald here, who I have to my right from Safe Surroundings. And today I'd also like to introduce Sandy Cole from New Futures. And she has a wonderful, beautiful long title that suits her perfectly, and I can never get it right, so I'm going to let her do that here in a minute. But we thought we would take some time to talk today about the importance of community and all of this, and what the steps that are being taken in other communities, and perhaps maybe even steps that need to be taken in this community to put towards the effort of raising awareness and education and implementing tools and resources and those sorts of things to move ahead of all of this. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's the best way to put it at this point. So, welcome Melissa, welcome Sandy. Thank you for being here with me.
Having us.
So Sandy, let's start with you. So now that we're introducing you and bringing you into the mix. So tell us a little bit about yourself and the organization that which you come from, which I think is great, by the way.
Thank you. New Futures is wonderful. So my role with New Futures is the Recovery Community Engagement Director. I've been with New Futures really just since July 1 of this year. Mm-hmm. And so our organization works to advocate, educate, and collaborate around prevention, treatment, and recovery for substance use disorders. My particular role is to work with the emerging recovery communities that are cropping up in different communities across New Hampshire, really in response to this addiction epidemic, recognizing that other states have paved the way nicely to really broaden the path, or widen that doorway to a pathway of recovery, and looking at different recovery support services that can be made available to help people once they've recognized that there's a problem. So my previous role before kind of coming out with my own personal recovery story,
which is amazing, by the way.
Thank you. Was working in prevention for 8 years prior. I worked in the Seacoast for 5 years doing prevention work with the Seacoast Public Health Network, and a couple years before that in Sullivan County doing prevention. So I bring that as well, which I think is really important to all the conversations that we have in looking at this full continuum of care of prevention, treatment, and recovery, because one's just not going to work by itself, and we really need to bring all of that.
And even as we were talking the last couple of times about the specific initiatives that the Wolfeboro Police Department have been putting into place and that sort of thing, and even they're saying we can't do it alone, and that's why I wanted to branch out and sort of go into this realm, because it is an important piece in terms of what the community can be doing. So Melissa, you've been working towards trying to do that as well. So what is some of the stuff that you've been doing for, I would say, Wolfeboro specifically, or is it a little bigger than that?
It is bigger than that. I am trying to, for the Wolfeboro community, trying to increase awareness and try to pull together the pieces that Sandy was just talking about, because I do provide prevention and treatment and recovery, and I've worked in all three of those sectors. So I understand what they all look like and what needs to be done to be able to pull those together. Wolfeboro is just starting. We're just the heroin
very
initiative.
Very much in the infancy.
It is in the infancy stage, and Wolfeboro PD's initiative, along with me, I'm hoping to use that as a springboard to then start to integrate more community events, integrate more services, talk about what the community can do to start to address these issues that we're having in our community and Carroll County as a whole. And so, we're still just kind of getting started.
Right. And so let's sort of expound on what some of those things are that the community can be doing. And Sandy, it would be great to hear from you too in terms of what, you know, the counties that you've come from and what they've been doing. You know, I know the Seacoast is also another very prevalent area this has been a hot issue for quite some time. So, you know, what are some of the things that are happening already, I would say, throughout the state? I think those things are important to know. And what are some of those things that you're starting to introduce in Wolfeboro, even though it's small?
So, yeah, and really important to recognize is that, you know, New Hampshire is not alone in this epidemic, and none of our communities are alone, and really none of our communities are exempt from this. It's happening in every neighborhood, it's happening in every community, big or small, wealthy or poor, all across the board. And the fatalities and the Narcan responses that we're seeing, if you put them on a map, there's no pocket that's untouched.
Empty. Yeah.
And so whether people know it or not, I'm you know, would strongly believe and feel confident in saying that if you haven't heard a personal story from a friend or a family member or a coworker, there's probably someone in your life that's being affected by this. And unfortunately, this has been an issue. Addiction has been an issue that has been largely stigmatized to kind of be this behavioral problem, or it only happens to those people over there, or and we're just, you know, unfortunately it's taking large numbers of lives to be lost for people to realize that everyone's being touched. So, you know, this is really giving every community a call to action of what do we do, because what we've been doing isn't enough, or we need to step up a little bit more. So with the prevention, there's really successful coalition models that are working effectively across New Hampshire and work effectively across the country. And why a coalition is really important is because it doesn't look to any one, you know, group within a community, whether it's parents or it's a school or a law enforcement or social service providers or medical providers, to say, okay, you need to fix the problem. And the coalition development really recognizes that everybody has a piece in building this support network, and building resilient communities. So I think that's a really great first step that communities can take, is to get representatives from every piece of the community to say, what's our part? It's like a spider web, you know, and kind of building that up so you have that resiliency and you have that support available on that full continuum. So looking,
and it puts everybody on the same page.
Right.
Yeah.
No one's to blame and no one's solely responsible.
Right.
And everybody can be a part of it. And so really working to resource the schools with student assistance counselors. That's one of the things we see a push for state dollars to be used for, and kind of the evidence-based programming, and that's where our kids are for a good part of
7
their lives.
hours a day. Yeah, that's a lot of time.
You know, bringing programs that help educate parents. And that's why, you know, when I saw Safe Surroundings, by far, hands down, it was the best presentation, you know, educational presentation I have ever seen.
And you're speaking to her mock bedroom, correct?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
Incredible.
I haven't seen it yet, but we have discussed it, and I do want you to talk a little bit about that today, if you can. So. Yeah.
So I'll let Melissa talk about that, but bringing information so that we don't just, you know, as parents, we don't just expect this to be, you know, substance use to be a rite of passage, or kids will be kids, because the drugs are getting harder, they're getting more dangerous, you know, the marijuana that's out there now is not the marijuana that was out there, even like 10 years ago. And so how do we get the information that helps parents make choices on behalf of parenting that are really most healthy for the kids? And how do we empower the kids to make healthy choices? So one of those programs that's being utilized across the state is Life of an Athlete, and that not only can work for sports teams and kids involved with sports, but a lot of schools have taken it to any kind of extracurricular activity happening within the school, even if it's chess club. But it looks at the kids' behavior on and off the field or in and out of the school, and really holding some accountability to what's on your Facebook page, and if on a Friday night there's pictures being posted, or if another, if a party gets busted and kids were drinking or drugging, what does that mean for your sportsmanship? Because essentially you're role models for your peers, and giving kids the sense of empowerment to want to uphold to a high level of healthy decision making. So, and then with the law enforcement, I think now with the addiction epidemic, they're really saying, hey, we're on the front line. How do we help people that are in need? Because we're often, between the police and fire, they're administering Narcan, they're responding to overdose calls, but on a preventative side is how do we get prescription medications off the street? So we have the prescription drug take back days, which I think is coming up on September 26th. So a lot of police departments participate with that. And within the medical community, we're looking with a real close eye and not part of the community dynamics, because unfortunately what we're seeing with this heroin and opiate addiction is that a lot of point of onset is legitimate prescription medications, and people are finding themselves hooked, and then they're finding themselves needing to feed a habit, and heroin's available and it's cheaper. So one of the initiatives we're looking at statewide and really have been implementing is called SBIRT. It's screening, brief intervention, and referral to treatment, and that's something that can be incorporated as a early screening tool to recognize problematic behavior, before maybe it's kind of a heavier consequence, and really recognizing addiction as a health issue. It's not a behavioral issue, so how do we bring it into the health care?
Right.
And I think people, families feel good about getting information from their doctor. Yet when we look at the training that most physicians and medical providers have had, it doesn't require or mostly even necessarily include any ounce of training around substance use disorders.
Right.
So we have
Right.
a
So
real
having that,
disconnect.
there's something to be said there for having that extra education for screening and having that knowledge piece. And I've spoken to that before. I think that in terms of it starting with the medical prescriptions and everything, and as you were saying, it's like people want to get information from their doctors, and there's that trust there, that there's that build there, but everybody is different, and every prescription has a different chemical reaction with every different body, and so you have to have an awareness of yourself too. It's not like you were saying earlier, you can't put the blame in any one place. It's so many moving factors. So in sort of being educated as many ways as you can about all of it, I think is so important. So definitely. and I was noted on something when you were speaking earlier, and I can't remember exactly what it was, but Melissa, I did want you to talk a little bit about your mock bedroom program and what you were doing in terms of it being one of the resources for prevention education within schools and I would say in communities in general. It doesn't necessarily have to be.
Oh, no, no. And it can be for I'm doing 2 in October for clinicians and prevention workers. Obviously, the presentation looks a little different, but the mock room's still the same, and the current trends are part of that. So I founded Safe Surroundings. Can I give a little background on that?
Please.
So I started Safe Surroundings after being in the field for, I've been in the field over 18 years now, and what I was seeing was more and more parents were bringing their teenagers into my office in private practice when they already had a problem. So, and a lot of times they were saying, we didn't see this coming. We knew he smoked a little weed, or we knew he drinks from time to time, but we didn't see this coming. And parents feeling very disempowered, calling up saying, I think I found something. What do you think this is? And so I just felt like I was at this point where it was really hard to treat adolescents who have addictions because the adolescent brain is not fully developed. So their judgment portion of their brain in particular isn't fully developed, but the reward portion of it is. So it's the recovery concepts are harder to use with teenagers. So that dilemma and just feeling like, okay, so what can I do? And so I started researching, and I discovered this mock teenage bedroom that they were doing called Hidden in Plain Sight in Ohio. And it was put on by police officers and youth workers. And I thought, wow, that's right up my alley because I'm a very interactive therapist anyway. And so I called them, they sent me materials, other people were doing it, I went and saw other people. But they're all youth workers or police officers. So I thought, as a clinician, as somebody who works with families and is in the front line, hearing the stories, watching their struggles, that I could put that mock room to a different use. So my presentation is a little different than, say, some of the other ones that put out the mock room. And so the mock room is a teenage bedroom. What we do is go into, say a public school, set up a room. It looks just like a teenager's bedroom. And there are over 80 indicators of teenage risky behaviors. Some of them are hidden. Some of them are hidden in plain sight, if you will.
Right.
And what the audience, when they first arrive, they walk through the room. They look through things. They move things around. They touch, feel, smell. And I'm in the room with them, talking to them about what they're finding, answering questions. And then I do a presentation where I use the room to teach the parents and providers and the concerned adults about the current trends. So I will say, if I'm covering marijuana, I will say to the audience, does anybody see anything in the room that would indicate this teenager might be using marijuana? And allow them to kind of search for things. And then through my PowerPoint in the room, I bring paraphernalia out, I lay it out in front of them, and I walk them through how they're using it, what each thing looks like, what it means, and every detail that I possibly can. So it really kind of covers the gamut, so that parents who may feel like in denial, that seems to be a really big thing for parents. They don't want to believe that their kid is using. So they, in their head, they're like, oh, it's just experimenting, or no, that's not really any big deal, that's not anything. So when you see the things in the room, and then you go into your teenager's room, and then you see it, my hope is that it kind of taps that denial, kind of throws it off, if you will. So I do the current trends. I teach them about the progression of substance use, which is something really important to teach people. What that is that, we have this opiate epidemic and the issues that we are dealing with. And they didn't just start using heroin or opiates. It started before that for a lot of folks. and so in teenage years in particular,
Mm-hmm.
and so it's a progression. And so you have your experimentation phase, which is they're trying it, they don't know the effects of it. Experimentation phase does not last the entire adolescence. Okay, so they're not experimenting for that whole time.
Right.
All right, and so then if they like it, they go into misuse. And that's a real pivotal time for an adolescent, because that's when they're seeking it for the effects of it, and that they start having minor negative consequences. So they may be grounded, they may have a really bad hangover, if you will. And so how a parent responds in that moment can dictate the whole progression further. Okay, it may or may not, but to be able to have a dialogue with your kid, have consequences, and be clear with them that no use, any use is unacceptable. And so that sends that message right then. So then the adolescent's going to say, you know what, this isn't worth it, and so I'm not doing this anymore. If the intervention or the consequence is not strong enough, if you will, or doesn't teach the adolescent what it needs to do, they will continue to use, but they'll find different ways around it. So inevitably, at that point, they could go into the abuse, and that's when the consequences become greater. That's a diagnosis. At that point, they would need outpatient treatment, evaluation, depending on what they're using, and that's when they start going from stronger substances. So they may be a marijuana smoker, their tolerance may cap out, it doesn't feel as good as it used to, it's taken me too much to get high, and so they may move on to a harder substance. And so and then that's another opportunity for change, just like with misuse. What we do can change the course. Okay, so there's that opportunity for change. So if a teenager or an adult gets treatment at that point, when we talk about treatment and recovery, we then create that opportunity so that they can have an intervention, they can start to understand why they're using, how they're using, and kind of move from there. And if that opportunity, if they continue to do what they're doing, then it progresses to addiction and dependence. So that progression is very important, because a lot of times parents will come into my office and they'll say, he doesn't have a problem, he just smokes a little weed, or he drinks from time to time, but they all do. And so I feel like it's really important for parents to understand what they're seeing with their children, and then to be able to say, okay, so he is moving, this is a progression, I need to do something, even if I don't think there's a problem, there can be. It can develop into a problem. And so, which is part of what Safe Surroundings and the High and Seek program is really about. It's about increasing awareness to promote early detection and early intervention of teenage use or risky behaviors. So then after that, we
It's
teach.
another way of screening, really.
It's a frontline way.
On a different level.
It is, yeah. And then the last thing we do is we teach people, parents and caring adults, how to communicate with their teenagers, or how to communicate with teenagers about their concerns about use or something they find. And the technique we use really does a nice job at keeping the wall down, not putting you in a position where the kid your teenager or child does not get defensive, and it's an opportunity for change. So we're all about making sure that parents leave with that knowledge, which is pretty scary, but we're not leaving them scary.
Just listening to it.
It's not scary.
And my children are young.
It starts young, but I make sure everyone leaves with tools.
Right.
They have tools to know what to do, and in each community that we present in, we provide resources. Me, the school, the coalition that we're working for, we join together to make sure that every parent in that room has the resources they need if they see something or if they find that their child is using. So it's a really powerful tool. It's the first program of Safe Surroundings. We have more, but this is the first one that we're introducing, and it's been pretty powerful tool for
it sounds
parents.
like it's been very well received, and that's
Yes.
great. And it's I finally remembered what it was I was connecting with earlier, because you touched on it too, and that is that it really is a progress. Like, it's a progression.
Yep.
You know, and
Yep.
it doesn't. It starts, like you were saying. It starts with what you're finding with, you know, medical prescriptions, or it starts with just this experimentation. And so we were talking before off camera about those three levels that are really important, and sort of what New Futures is all about. And you know, the prevention, the education, the recovery, the making sure it's all there, so that the tools, as you say, no matter at what point we're at this point, because it's across the board at all levels, depending upon where you are, that there's something that you can grab onto. So, what specifically right now, aside from, you know, the initiative from Wolfeboro Police Department that we know about, is Wolfeboro working on right now?
Well, I haven't really seen anything.
Yeah. No, your honesty is everything. That's why we're here.
I understand from the police department that the superintendent's office are working on some ideas for curriculum for teenagers. I haven't really been involved in that. I haven't heard about it other than from the police department on that scale. What I would like to do is get a coalition started here, which is exactly what Sandy was talking about, the coalition. As I was struggling with the community and trying to figure out what can I do to help. I mean, I'm out there in other communities in New Hampshire, and I mean, I've been to 5 different states at this point. And so what can I do here? And what needs to happen is we need to get a coalition, even if it's just Wolfeboro area coalition or Southern Carroll County coalition, something that will allow us to, you know, have a resource for people, provide services for people, but also to bring some grants and some funding in so that we can start to go into the schools and provide the evidence-based models of treatment, prevention to teenagers. Not just teenagers, though. It needs to start in 4th and 5th grade. That's what we know, that's where the education needs to start. The conversation you'll have with a child who's in 4th grade versus 9th grade is different, but across the country, that is the model that we're going with, that they're using, is to start to have that dialogue. So whether it's the school, or it's the parents, or relatives, it's everyone working together and not saying, well, that's my responsibility rather than the schools. And the schools saying, no, the parents need to do that, or a police officer, it's not my role.
See, we're still pointing fingers.
We're
still
exactly
pointing fingers.
Yeah, it's frustrating. I really feel like I'm hoping that the heroin initiative, the opiate initiative with Wolfeboro PD and myself will allow us an opportunity to bring that awareness out to the community and to people who have the skill set to be able to come in here and start to help our community and start to offer opportunities for events like High and Seek to come in and present this and start to have more opportunities for people so that it's not hidden.
Right.
It feels hidden in our community.
So and you were talking about it earlier too, and it's everywhere, you know, and I can't say that enough, and I've said it here multiple times, and I say it all the time. It is everywhere. It is not away anymore. It is not, the veil has got to be lifted, because it's just going on everywhere. You know, like you said, like, to have not heard a personal story from someone you know connected to somebody else. You know, that doesn't exist anymore. You know.
If I could interject, it is everywhere,
Yeah.
and so, but there are many communities that are doing something.
Right.
There are programs. There are people joining together.
There are coalitions.
And so we need to get on board with that. We need to get on board that as a community here in Wolfeboro.
Yeah. Well, and I would say, in some ways, I feel like it's starting to get connected. You know, we have Laconia that sort of paved the way in this area and connected, you know, we adopted from them what the town of, I shouldn't say we, but the town of Wolfeboro is doing, from that respect. So, I think the dots are slowly starting to connect and people are working together.
Yeah.
So, were you gonna? You look like you were gonna say
well,
something.
I was gonna encourage you too in kind of this as you embark on trying to identify community partnerships that can help move this forward or mobilize in this direction. Each community in New Hampshire is part of a public health network system. So Carroll County has a public health network that you should definitely feel supported by and able to plug into what those resources are that they have, because that's where a lot of the work is happening around the continuum of care and around prevention. And so you talked about the community coalition grants that are provided. I think New Hampshire was awarded 10 in this year, but that takes a long time to get towards, and I think it shouldn't be missed that the partnerships and work that can happen without the funding too is equally as important. But there are resources available from from parts of your region and your county. And I think I wanted to add that as we talk about the notion of this happening everywhere, and even if you don't have the heroin fatalities on your part of the map, like Melissa had pointed out, this is really the tip of the iceberg. And when we look at New Hampshire's substance use trends overall, it really is starting with that adolescent use. Our age of first use in New Hampshire is averaged at 13. So, when we talk about bringing prevention into 4th and 5th grades, it's starting the dialogue of between parents and kids, between schools and kids, and primary care providers, of how to support healthy decision making and how to be prepared for how to turn something down, for how to walk away. But our youth population, New Hampshire ranks first for marijuana use between 12 and 17-year-olds. For alcohol and marijuana, we're first in the country. So, you said it was said that we're not, our kids aren't starting with heroin, and it really does start with the prevention kind of at the earlier ages.
To piggyback on what you were saying about being the highest in the state amongst 12 and 17-year-olds, Carroll County ranks the highest in the state for count of teen use.
Wow.
And it's broken down into the different substances, but when you go through their report, it has each substance where we have the highest, and in some areas it's significantly different, and which is really not. It shouldn't be as big of a surprise as it feels like, because we don't have a lot of resources.
Right.
We don't have a lot of programs that are working on prevention or treatment or recovery in our area. So if you don't have that, there are consequences. There are outcomes to that. Just like there are positive outcomes if we provide that, then we know that people will get recovery works, treatment works.
Right. And then there's knowing that that a step has been made. Excuse me. That there's forward progression there. Just to say, well, it is because we don't have anything. It's like, well, no, there is something. There is something you can do. Everybody can be an effective member, educated. That's I've been saying it all along. This is important. People need to know.
But people are feeling.
People need to know what's happening. People need to hear these numbers. People need to. Yeah, it all just needs to be out there and known, because it's just not. It's not just something you read about anymore.
Yeah.
It's something too often people are living,
What I've been finding, whether I talk to parents or if I go to an event of New Futures or New Hampshire Providers Association, when I talk to, the broader spectrum, that the way that the media has taken the heroin epidemic and the stories. And if you think about that on like a smaller scale, it's very traumatic to hear those stories.
Mm-hmm.
It's very traumatic to see something happen to somebody die in your community from a drug overdose. It's very traumatic. And so many people are feeling disempowered, and the issue is bringing out anger and fear in people. And so that's where the community piece comes in, is to try to help everybody heal from that and give them hope and have opportunities for people to have a dialogue about their worries about their community, and to be able to work together as a community to start to address it, whether it be as simple as parents talking to each other, or a community association have an association meeting and they talk about the things that are going on in the neighborhood. So you have those, and certain those are going on, but it is as simple as something you can do today is in your communities. So
I love that you mentioned that. We hear and see the devastating effects of this epidemic hitting our states and hitting our communities. And it was actually at that point I was standing at another community assembly, listening to Chucky's Fight, who is a gentleman that lost two sons to an 18-year-old and a 19-year-old to heroin overdose. And I was just watching, once again, kind of a full assembly of adults and community members being hushed by this devastation. Oh my gosh, wow, this happened. And I stood there having 8 years of recovery behind me, from addiction, and I thought to myself, there's less than a dozen people in my life that know I'm in recovery, and I go into rooms and hear about success stories and hear about people's gratitude for the lives that they're living, full, meaningful lives that they're living after finding recovery from addiction. And I turned to a close colleague of mine and said, why is it that we have to hear that we have to wait for crisis, or we have to wait for someone to tell their devastating story of loss to
Why
feel like then we listen, then we should do something.
Why now all of a sudden that the media is all over this?
Yeah.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, and that was really, and shortly after that, I was at another high school assembly, listening to Chris Herron, who's a former Celtics player. He's has a program called the Project Purple, and he kind of has this presentation called Basketball Junkie, and he talks about how he lost his professional NBA career to prescription drug addiction and abuse, and it was one of the most powerful stories, along with the movie The Anonymous People. And I thought, this is it. This is my call to action. And I actually kind of broke down into tears, because I realized that the reason why less than a dozen people in my life knew that I was in recovery is because I thought, that was like the bad me. That was something that people would feel uncomfortable if they knew. Maybe my girlfriends wouldn't ask me out for a girls' night, or they'd be afraid of like whether I could drink or not, and I love the life I have. I love going out dancing. Today I can be in a bar and not feel the temptation to drink, because I've found recovery. And so that, in the middle of all this hopelessness and fear around what's happening to our communities, I wanted to offer a message of hope that treatment does work.
There is recovery. There is life beyond.
People do
this
recover,
moment.
and it's available. And there's been a growing kind of surge of of people from the recovery movement or from the recovery community kind of behind this movement of advocacy with anonymity. So we can be part of anonymous programs or not, but we can share our stories of recovery, and I think that's been a real kind of beacon of light in all of this, that as we advocate for recovery support services, people start to see the potential and the hope that's available for individuals, for families, and for communities to be able to work together around this.
Yeah. Well, and I think on that note, that is a great place to sort of wrap this up at this point. You guys are amazing. I think, I hope people keep listening, and I hope that, we've done our part in letting the community know that, specific to Wolfeboro, that is, that, there are resources available. We just need to start putting them into place, and I hope you guys will continue the conversation and continue on this conversation with me as we continue to just let people know what's going on and what can be going on at this. I feel like that's the point we're at, is like what can be going on that's not going on, I don't want to read any more. I don't want to read any more bad stories. I just don't. I'm all about hope at this point. So thank you, Sandy. Thank you, Melissa, for being here. So.
Thank you.